At the end of part 2, I presented scriptural Bible evidence explaining how the fallen angels, known as the Anak, had sexual intercourse with human women, who in turn gave birth to the Nephilim, hybrid fallen angel men. However, I hear some of you ask, how could the fallen angels have engaged in sexual intercourse with human women, when we have always been taught that angels are vaporous, non-solid, see-through spirits, and we know that human women are made of solid flesh and blood? It is a fact that a solid flesh and blood woman would simply pass through a vaporous spirit. So how could the two of them have sexual intercourse, resulting in the birth of solid flesh and blood children? Well, I say that the group of fallen angels, known as the Anak, Anunnaki, had to be solid flesh and blood people, just like the human women that they mated with. Otherwise, how could the fallen angels have engaged in carnal desires and lusts of the flesh, confirmed in the Old Testament, if they themselves were not made up of flesh? It is a fact that for someone to engage in sins of the flesh, they themselves must also be physically made of flesh. Therefore, it would be perfectly logical to assume that the group of fallen angels spoken of in the Old Testament were themselves flesh and blood. And as I was explaining in part 2, Bible scholars are in mutual agreement that the fallen angels came down from heaven to the earth. The Bible makes it clear that heaven is made up of 3 levels. Starting from the bottom, first heaven, the sky where birds fly. Second heaven, outer space, where the planets, the sun, the constellations are located. Third heaven, outside the realm of the universe. This is the home and primary abode of God the Father and the kingdom of heaven. The following Bible verse confirms that there are multiple heavens. Genesis chapter 2 verse 4. Jehovah God made the earth and the heavens. The following Bible verse identifies what scholars believe to be first heaven. Psalm 104 verse 12. The birds of heaven have their home in the branches. The following Bible verses identify what scholars believe to be second heaven. Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 19. When you look up at heaven and see the sun, the moon and stars, all the forces of heaven, Do not be seduced into worshipping them. Isaiah chapter 13 verse 10. The stars of heaven and their constellations will not show their light. The rising sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The following Bible verse clearly identifies third heaven. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verses 2 to 4. I know a man belonging to Christ who 14 years ago ascended up into third heaven. Whether or not it was in the body or out of it, only God knows. But I do know that this man went up into paradise. Okay, going back to what I was saying earlier. The Bible explains that the fallen angels came down from heaven to the earth. However, the Bible does not specify which level of heaven, first, second or third, that the fallen angels came from. It just indicated that they came from heaven. According to the texts written on many ancient Sumerian tablets, similar to the one shown here, the Anunnaki fallen angels themselves actually claimed to come from outer space, from the Nibiru star system. Remember that the Bible identifies outer space as heaven in the following verses. Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 19. When you look up at heaven and see the sun, the moon and stars. Isaiah chapter 13 verse 10. The stars of heaven and their constellations will not show their light. The rising sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. Therefore, it is perfectly possible in Bible circles, using Bible language, that the Anunnaki came from second heaven, outer space. Okay, now going back to the information provided on Sumerian clay tablets. The Anunnaki fallen angels were a large group of astronauts known as the Igigi. Before the Igigi descended to the Earth, they were based on a way station situated on Mars. Marduk was the designated leader of the Igigi astronauts. However, according to the Bible, Satan is the leader of the fallen angels. Okay, so let me just break this down for you in simple terms. In Sumerian history, it identifies Marduk as the leader of the fallen angels. In the Bible, it identifies Marduk, Satan, as the leader of the fallen angels. Now, even a person with 2 brain cells can see that there is a match here.